Welcome everyone to Asian Pacific Voices Radio, where you'll find stimulating conversations that explore diverse topics and stories impacting our Asian Pacific American communities. I'm your host, Arnold Chun. Today, we have an amazing guest whose work spans acting, producing, writing, and championing AAPI creatives in entertainment. She is a Korean-American multi-hyphenate whose journey from public policy to Hollywood has been nothing short but inspiring. As the former global executive director of Kollaboration, she has played a pivotal role in amplifying Asian American talent. She has worked with industry giants like Netflix, HBO, Disney, and Warner Brothers, co-produces the Asian Pacific Filmmakers Experience at top festivals like Sundance and South by Southwest, and hosts, first of all, a podcast exploring career, relationships, mental health, and pop culture. Currently, she is producing her first feature documentary, Ashima, while continuing to make waves in film, TV, and podcasting. It is my pleasure to welcome Minji Chang on Asian Pacific Voices Radio. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Arnold. Hi, everyone. Really honored to be here.
Such a pleasure to, just meet another talented Asian American woman. You're such a role model for our community. We've had so many different guests that just, span so many different accolades, and so many of them being female. I think for myself as a father of 3 boys, I think it's so important to have people like yourself that embody success and just give that kind of inspiration and motivation for the next generation to come.
Thank you. That's a really big thing to say. I appreciate it, and good on you for raising the next generation. That's no small feat, Arnold. So
if I had like every cent for that time for the time that's told to me, maybe I'd be a millionaire by now.
Yeah.
But just want to dive in real quick. Your podcast, first of all, we know it dives into many different themes, especially career struggles to mental health. Tell us about what inspired you to start that, and how did it shape your personal and professional journey as you pursued that?
The origin story was I was running Kollaboration, which is a nonprofit, which is championing Asian American talent to diversify media, and a really wonderful nonprofit grassroots organization. We had our own podcast called Collabcast, which was the brainchild of my associate director, Marvin Yue, who was amazing. And he was very much into the podcast universe. And we were interviewing Asian American, talent and people behind the scenes and leaders. So much like yourself, we were like doing that since probably like 2012 or 13. So really early in the podcast universe. And I enjoyed it a lot. I love talking to people, learning about their stories. And Marvin was actually the impetus. He was the one that was encouraging me. I think because we offline would talk so much about career, our journeys, and I would love to get into dating and, the impact of generational trauma and racism and sexism and all that. Even personally with Marvin, like needling him about his love life and stuff. He's like, you should probably just have your own podcast. And I think I was like, no, I shouldn't. And I think I talked about an hour about why I shouldn't have a podcast. And he's like, that could have been its own episode. So at the time, it was really through Marvin's encouragement. I appreciate there's so many great AAPI men in my life who played a pivotal role in encouraging me and like giving me that extra push. And yeah, it was that at that time, there were very, very few female voices in the podcast space. And definitely very, very few Asian American, and very few actually at the time from my data analysis that were talking about things of a more sensitive nature. A lot of them were like business focused and, all incredible professional development type podcasts. So I was very nervous, but excited and motivated to share a different lens.
If you have guests that come on your podcast to talk about mental health from the AAPI community, do you find it a struggle for them to open up and discuss that particular part of their journey? Because as we know, it's not something native to Asian culture, being vocal and talking about our skeletons in the closet, the trauma that we've experienced, because so many of it goes back as far as if we look at our parents' generation, coming from World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, there's so Khmer Rouge, that there's so many conflicts that have happened in that time span, and I imagine for that particular generation that a modeling of how to vocalize the things that you deal with mentally hasn't really translated to the children, which is like myself. My parents never really sort of modeled that. I wonder, do you come across that sort of inhibition at times when you talk to people about mental health in the AAPI community on your podcast?
Absolutely. I think, I love that question. And I think that's been something that I think collaboration set such an important foundation for me in terms of experience being around artists for years and years across. We had 14 chapters at one point. So I had the privilege and the ability to travel and see Asian America. I was not seeing, I'm a Bay Area girl, so I'm definitely privileged and lucky to have grown up in a pretty diverse area of the world. But there's definitely other parts of the United States where the Asian American identity was definitely forming and very isolated and lost and with, a drought of role models and things. So getting to travel to those spaces, speaking with artists who are the most eager to share stories and even seeing their struggle in being authentic. Who the heck am I? How do I fit into this space as an individual, as a professional, as a child, as a lover? Like, really diving deep into those. And even in that, struggling when they're the most eager to talk about stuff like that, where they're vulnerable, was really eye opening to me. So I think that gave me a very specific insight, and people, I got to be around such beautiful human beings who are willing to be open about that. I think that set a foundation for me to understand the sensitivities, and then also merging that with my own life journey, my own struggles, learning how to be vulnerable. It's so uncomfortable. And being an actor, that being like one of my callings, and being forced to like step out of, I grew up actually being really shy, and learning how to just be comfortable with myself and take risks and be vulnerable, all those facets were kind of converging. So when I came to the podcast, I think my intention was create a safe space. I want to dive into some sensitive areas. I want to talk about the stuff that no one else or very few people are endeavoring to talk about. But let's make this not so excruciating. That was like an intention that I set. And I think people felt that. So even though I could feel the resistance, definitely at times you can feel, the pause or the hesitation or the cracked voice or whatever. We kind of just like took it moment by moment. And I was really astounded and like moved to see how people did open up, and people are dying to open up. They really want to share. So I think we're just creating more spaces. And I give credit to you too, Arnold, if you're doing that by doing the show. That's that's the work. I think those are the things that make it okay. And then we're seeing more and more and more leaders, because leaders lead by example. They don't just tell you what to do, which may be contradictory to our Asian culture, is like, do as I say, not as I do. But now we're really setting examples. And so I think that that's the most impactful thing to help people open up and investigate and go to dark places, or to be really honest about the truth of some of these things, how hard it is, because we're so programmed to be like, oh, it's not hard. I'm fine. What else can I do? I'm not doing enough, and those are all really sensitive topics. So
I can't thank you enough for being an advocate of that. I'm definitely 1000% on board with what you're saying. It's such a difficult road at times, because like you said, vulnerability is not something that we equate with strength oftentimes, right?
yeah.
And so just God bless the work that you're doing. That's amazing. And I
Thank
just
you.
can't thank you enough for being such a big advocate about that.
I appreciate that.
Want to ask you on another note,
Yeah.
you had a major role in Songbird in Cyberpunk
Yeah.
2077, Phantom
Yeah.
Liberty.
Yeah.
You were working alongside Idris Elba, Keanu Reeves. Tell us what that experience was like. I mean, how did voice acting compare to on-screen performance with the likes of those names?
It was all a shock. There was, like, I'll say on many, many levels, kind of down to the very baseline of voice acting itself. It was never a goal of mine. It was never something I was aspiring to do. I wanted to be an on-camera actor since I've been acting since I was a little kid in church, like doing musicals and stuff. And the goal was always to be Meryl Streep or Viola Davis or Amy Poehler is now in the mix. But yeah, so the voice acting thing really kind of organically emerged as an opportunity to make a living. I, like other artists, freelancing, I needed to make a living to pay my rent. And so voice acting kind of came to me, and I just ran with it because it seemed like it was seeking me versus me chasing it. And did a lot of hours, and you just do a lot of auditions where you have no idea what the project is. A lot of these, they're not going to tell you the stars attached. They're not going to tell you what, even in depth, what the project is. They'll give you such a brief, vague, okay, you're a Korean American woman, you're from New York, you're gritty, you're angry, or whatever, very vague, and you just have to roll with it. So yeah, that's how the audition for Songbird came out. And I had no idea what it was. I'm not a gamer. I don't know anything about that world, but I just did the best I could. That's what I've been trained as, is like a Korean American girl, who's has, high expectations from her family and things, like just show up and do the best you can, no matter what the thing is. And lo and behold, it ends up being this crazy role. And even after I had accepted the role, I still didn't know what it was. I had to accept the role without knowing what game it was, who was in it. They just were like, here's the role. We want to offer it to you. Do you want to take it? Yes or no? And then we will tell you what it is. So all of it was a shock. It was kind of the ride of a lifetime.
Yeah, oftentimes it seems like you're just kind of in the dark on a project as far as what and who and where or what is actually going on around it in terms of who you're working with, where it takes place and all those kind of things. And, that can be challenging because you're not able to kind of decipher and kind of creatively put together a setting and a backdrop and a tone of like, okay, this is kind of the angle I want to make my creative choice at. Coming at last minute. And that's, really difficult to do. And on that note, I mean, you're an actor, you're a producer, a writer, podcast host, and advocate. Like, how do you manage all that? How do you stay grounded, and like what continues to inspire you with all the different hyphenates that you do?
I don't know if I am managing it well, Arnold. That's debatable. Like, I think I've been really fortunate to be given a lot of opportunities. And with any good thing, it's a double-edged sword. You have to then learn how to be very flexible and adaptable. And I think those are the skills. I think those are the main skills I've learned throughout this journey, is how to be very intentional and be very discerning. Because you do make mistakes, you overextend yourself, you are overly ambitious or overly people pleasing and just trying to do everything when you really can't. We are finite beings, and we do need to rest, and we do need to recharge, and you can't show up and be at your A game all the time. So I think there's a lot of trial and error, a lot of failure involved in, I guess, managing this, but all is driven by, I think, what fuels me as a person. I've been through a lot of difficult things in my life. I had a really, really beautiful childhood and also a really rough Asian American upbringing with, our specific challenges, identity crises. I struggled with a really difficult relationship as a teenager. All of those things really shaped me to kind of find my North Star, and the really dark things I went through actually fed my motivation to like be really ruthless about what it is that I want. It's very difficult. I'm still navigating that now. But I'd say those are the things, like finding your North Star, like, okay, I'm a storyteller. So if that shows up as an actor or as a filmmaker and it can pay me and sustain me, like how do you find that center point where you are able to survive, thrive, and contribute? Those are like the ways that I manage, and it's like a daily thing. I'm always like, is this too much? I failed my podcast. I feel like my listeners are so understanding, because there's seasons where like I'll have a consistent season, and the work of running a show, it is a lot of work behind the scenes before you're ever recording, and after you're recording. So I've been really inconsistent in some areas, and I've had to like learn how to take accountability for that, how to forgive myself for that, and do I still want to do it? And there's no perfect road. It's just been a lot of trial and error.
No, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Before I ask you about Ashima, is it Ashima or am I saying that correctly?
That's, I guess, the westernized version of saying her name. The Japanese version of her name is Ashima, and that's what
Ashima,
I call her.
Ashima. Before we talk about that, I know that you studied public health at UC Berkeley, so you pursued a career in public policy. I forgot to ask you, like, what was the transition point that you went into then being global executive director of Kollaboration and then leading to all the entertainment stuff? Because obviously, I can see the pathway from there, but where was the shifting point from UC Berkeley to going into the entertainment industry coming from public policy?
It was a long, drawn out interweaving of incidences that I think it was again a mix of intention and surrender, of just following that path. I mentioned, like, I'd be remiss to like not mention, like, I went through a really difficult relationship. And I think that's something that's not really talked about a lot in Asian American narratives, because for a lot of reasons, it can feel shameful or traumatic or whatever. But I did go through something really difficult. I've come to peace with a lot of it, but it really did shape the trajectory of my life. I was in a pretty dark place as a teenager and going through some really difficult things in the middle of college. And I think that was when I was so certain that I wanted to be a doctor and also work in public health and, help heal people and do my part. And that was not by my parents. Like I wanted to do that. And there was always the artist in me. I told you I was doing acting and stuff since I was 5. And the whole movie world seemed like a complete dream. It was something out of my ability to have. It was just like a fantasy world where other people get to do that, not me. And, again, it's timing. I think it's providence. It's destiny. YouTube came into YouTube existed while I was in college. It did not exist before that time. And so right when I was at the crux of this kind of escape to a degree, like escaping a really bad relationship and the toll it was taking on me mentally, I kind of was given this little light where I found YouTube and I found out there was this guy named PK, who is a comedian, who's a founder of Kollaboration. And it was really this like funny comedy song bit that he did at UC Berkeley at my school. And I found this video and I was like, this is hilarious. Who is this guy? I've never seen or heard anything like this where it's so specific to Asian and Korean American comedy. And I found out about Kollaboration through this little thing called Google, which was already like gaining traction at that time. All the internet, like it truly changed my life. And just investigating, inviting him to Berkeley to perform at our Korean culture night. I cornered him and I was like, Kollaboration sounds great. Like, how come you don't have a chapter in the Bay Area? We have so many Asians here. It's like, well, no one's running it. It's a volunteer thing. Do you want to do it? And I said, no, that's way too much work. And just like all these like little seeds that were planted along the way, discovering this YouTube, having a conversation with PK years later, volunteering because I had been working in public health and doing that thing, still pursuing that, but always having this nagging voice of storytelling about creating art, creating things that change the world, because that's what I feel like music, movie, like TV shows, they have really shaped my identity and my view of the world. So yeah, it was just like a little, like one little thing at a time, taking little and then larger risks at a time, and then finally jumping ship and disappointing the hell out of my parents.
PK is awesome. I've known him for like 20 years. He's a really good friend. He's a really, really great guy.
Yeah. He's become like a big brother.
Yeah, no, he is. So jumping to now Ashima, I mean, first feature documentary as a producer. Tell us what that's about. What's going on? What's with Ashima?
Ashima is an incredible human being. So if you don't know her, I hope you look up her story, because I think her influence and her aura and like what she's done, I think that far surpasses the rock climbing world, in which she is a prodigy. She's like a child prodigy from New York who has just been excellent at rock climbing, which has been at that time a very male dominated sport, very predominantly white sport. You know, in America, it's like there's been less people of color and women in the sport that are performing at that level. And so she was very early influencer in that space, not because she was trying to be, simply because she is. And I think that's something really beautiful about her. And the film is about her attempting a world record, but the film is more focused on her relationship with her father, who is a very interesting character. I have a hard, relatability to complicated relationships with your father and with somebody that you both love and kind of bump heads with. And so the film is about her journey of that. And it's been, again, another unexpected journey being a feature documentary film producer, but I just kind of went with it because it felt right. And it's been pretty fulfilling, albeit very difficult.
When is it completed? Can we see it? What's the status on its release? Or give us a little bit more information on how we can check it out.
Yeah, so it is done. We've been doing our festival run the last year and a half. We've gone to 35 festivals, won some great awards. Grand Jury Award, we won for documentary. We won Audience Choice Award, which means the most to me. It's been really great. And as many people that might know about the film industry, there's a lot of turmoil and stagnation that's been happening. So we are trying to get the movie out so that the public can see it. That's its own circus in and of itself. So I'm navigating that for the first time as a producer to like get a distribution deal and get it out in the world so people can see it. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think people would love to see that. I mean, it's always incredible to find, truly unique stories of Asian descent, Asian American descent, because there's a lot more to be told, because there's not a framework where so many of our stories have been highlighted and made and produced by mainstream companies out there. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of scratching the surface, and I think you're really contributing to that.
Thank
So as
you.
far as that is concerned, I think it ties into my next question. Your cultural background obviously has
Uh-huh.
definitely influenced your creative work.
Yes.
What aspects specifically about your Korean American identity do you hope to explore more, maybe in future projects coming up?
That's a big, I think I've had a pretty complicated relationship with my Korean American roots or my Korean roots. I have so much, the Han is very strong. I have so much pride in my roots of like the things that I think are so unique and like beautiful and sacred about being a Korean descent, the grit, the determination, the tenacity, the intelligence, the like never giving up. It's so beautiful. And this kind of collective feeling of like, of connectedness to a larger whole, I think is so beautiful. And I also see like anything with any community, any culture, there can be a double-edged sword to that. There are extremes of, you know, kind of the overachieving or where do we, the burnout, the suppression, the unprocessed trauma. There's a lot there also that I think can, you know, that really shape our lives and like the way that we go and the issues with mental health, the addictions, the, you know, the dark side of being a human being. So I'm definitely exploring and reconciling all those things and learning how to navigate that with love. And because I think I've just had a lot of wounds and attributed a lot of my traumas to my Korean roots. And there may be a level of truth in that. And there may be like, it's putting too much weight on that. It's just, that's life. Life is full of suffering. We're here to like learn a lot of things while we're living and bump into different people. So I'm trying to like reconcile all those things in this next chapter as a creative to, approach things with honesty and a lot of love. But I think honesty requires a level of brutal truth. Like you can't gloss over certain things that are highly dysfunctional or really problematic. And because I love my roots, I don't want to condemn my people, but I also want to be really truthful. That's what I think art is so beautiful. It's like such a great gateway to explore all that. You have the freedom to like be a little unhinged or to be controversial and provocative, you know, in this space, other spaces where you cannot be so frank. So yeah, that's
Absolutely.
kind of the thing.
No, absolutely. And I think for most of the Asian American community, you know, a lot of us are still just second generation, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's this conglomerate mix between the way that your parents' ideology has brought you up, at the same
Yeah,
time embracing the side that is American and the culture is different.
yeah,
And oftentimes I think that battle is monumental in terms of, you know, a very conservative type of display of expression oftentimes when it comes to the things as far as family, social
yeah,
life, love life, and those sort of things. And then, like you said, to your point, on the creative end, it's meant to be more raw in the sense that you're supposed to express yourself. So to
yeah.
translate that into writing stories that, to your point, are on the darker side, in the sense of showing the moral depravity of just humankind,
Mm-hmm.
the being that is a human that goes through the gamuts of all different kinds of influences depending on whatever social demographic area that you've grown up in,
Yeah,
is sometimes a battle to like you want to show that kind of maybe pits the community in a light where you know people are like, oh, I don't approve of that, I don't think that's right.
yeah,
But I think there's an importance to your point, and I really champion you doing that, is and wanting to do that, is being honest and raw, because I think the more and more that we break down the walls to the rest of not only just American culture in the sense of the people that are outside of the community and the whole world, as far as we're just regular human beings. We also cry, we also laugh, we also have addictions, we
yeah,
also have depression, we also deal with that stuff. It
yeah,
humanizes us, right? And
absolutely.
I can't thank you enough for, you know, resonating that same sentiment. It's something that I think more of us need to really embrace, and support, in the sense of the people that are not in the creative world, to recognize like, man, the stories that these people are trying to do, I connect with it. I may not necessarily want to show my own life that I can, obviously, relate and know that I've gone through those same things, but I support it because it also gives a voice and humanizes us. And I think that's so important that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Arnold. That means a lot.
Yeah. So on that note, tell us some great pieces of advice for the next generation, the AAPI filmmakers and creatives trying to break into the industry. Like, what would you give us in terms of advice for them?
Ironically, I think PK gave me some of the best advice, at least for me. I think any advice is taken with a huge grain of salt because it needs to be internalized and really looked at through a lens of self and your own specific context. I think context is so important. But PK at the time, again, this is like the early 2000s. The internet's a different existent, entity at that time. The way to navigate all those things is different. College tuition fees were different. The opportunities were different. So, but the advice that he gave me, because I think that he assumed that I was asking him, I was like, I want to be an actor. I want to get into film. I think he thought that I meant I wanted to drop out of Berkeley and quit everything, burn everything to the ground and like pursue Hollywood. That's not what I meant. I just was like, I want to like get into film. How might I do that? So his advice was, at the time he told me to work a regular job because he's like, you may not quit school. I think he didn't want to have that on his head where it's like, oh my God, Minji's parents are going to say that I told her to quit Berkeley. But he's like, stay in school, finish school, get a regular job. And if after having a salary, paid vacation, sick days and benefits, if you're willing to give that up, if you still have the motivation to give that up for a life of instability, then maybe you actually want it. He didn't even say like, then you actually want it. He said, maybe you actually want it. And I think for someone like me that can be very optimistic, and I'm a dreamer, I'm a visionary, all these things, it is important to ground and like how to marry absolute Delulu fantasy. Because I'm such an advocate for that. I'm like, go for it. Like, we're on a floating rock. All these rules are made up. Go for it and do the absolute best you can. And also have your bases covered. There's a level of like practicality that I have now. And in general, that taught me how to like do hard things. I think that's what I was trained to do, is not expect comfort. Don't expect it to be easy. It's more like consider what it's worth to you in order to pursue it. And I think tempering that, there's a lot of generational differences of how folks might expect the world to be. It's like, oh, if I just make a cool video, I'm going to go viral. I'm going to make it big. But I think that's tempered now that we've had all these viral videos. Having a viral video is great and it can put you on the map, but it doesn't mean sustainability. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, how do you vision board your life and how do you also stay really adaptable? Because it's always going to change. So I think getting used to doing hard things is my advice, and don't expect it to be easy. You don't have to like over dramatize it, but you don't have to, it kind of just helps you stay resilient, and build resiliency. I think that the creative world is not for the faint of heart. And I kind of relish that. There's part of me that feels that cause I'm very Korean, like very like it's blood, sweat and tears. And then it kind of makes it like, I put my all into it. And then that payoff is something that no one can touch. So don't ever, and like, so you might get a lot of fulfillment. You might not get a lot of money. Those are like, not everyone gets to hit it big and make tons of money and have fame. And I think that's changed a lot generationally. I don't think everyone expects that now, but I said a whole lot of something. I hope some of that makes sense. It's just
very well
getting
said.
used to hard things.
I think you set the tone as far as a principle of like, if you want to build something, it takes hard work. It doesn't happen overnight. That the instant success doesn't actually mean that it's going to be long lived. Mm-hmm. And so, and I don't think you meant like, constantly then pursuing so many different avenues at once. I think it's, as a craftsman, you want to master one thing at a time and to build your portfolio and your repertoire of the things that you can do. But that doesn't happen just over a week. It doesn't happen over a month. It doesn't happen over a year. It takes decades sometimes. Yeah. And I think the more that you can model that for the young generation, they can see the amount of work and dedication that it takes to do this. To your work, to the faint of heart, it can be crushing. It can be so crushing at times. Yeah. And I think people like yourself are giving the role models to the next generation of like, look at how hard you had to work to get to this place. It's not like you're done. You're still working hard. You still continue to pursue it. And so I think you're just motivating all of our viewers and our audiences to understand if this is what you want to pursue, you got to put the work in and you got to be dedicated. And you got to have a vision, right? Like you said, you got to have a vision. So
absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Also, I want to say to take care of yourself. I think that's a really big piece that I'm still learning how to live right now. And it's a funny thing to navigate that because I'm me and I can be really extra and I love to do stuff and I love people. So I kind of can't, in that vein, I can have endless amounts of energy, but I have to monitor that too and have to like know how to say no and learn how to have boundaries, actually abide by them, and actively help myself. And helping yourself can mean say no to projects, say no to opportunities. And when you're so like ambitious, that can be really hard to discern because you feel like you're like sacrificing everything. But I'm currently just like identifying all the anxiety that I have. That's a new thing that I'm really like internalizing, like how I do have a lot of anxiety and just trying to manage that so that I can keep doing this for a longer term and not burn out.
Okay. And that's so encouraging. It's a lot to take in. I'm just like hit by
that.
But we want to do a little fun thing real quick because we got a little time left. I want to do some one word answer lightning round stuff. So I'm going to blurt out some things, and you tell me what comes to your head. Okay, ready?
Okay.
Japchae or pasta?
Japchae.
Beach or mountain?
Beach.
One word to describe your career journey.
Roller coaster.
Most inspiring film or TV show?
Lately, Severance.
Go-to karaoke song?
Hero by Mariah Carey.
And if you could have dinner with someone living or dead, who would it be?
Right now, Meryl Streep. Just want to hold her hand. She would let me.
Great choices. Oh my gosh. Well, this was just so inspiring. Thank you so much for your time. My goodness.
Thank you.
Wanted to know, let our listeners know, website, social media to share so they can follow you, keep up with what you're doing. Like what's your handles? My
handles are Minjizi and my website is minjichang.com. I am doing yet another project. I like feel like your list of stuff. I'm thinking like that's too many things, Minji. Narrow it down. One of the things I want to contribute, I'm starting a meditation channel. So like it's all kind of part and parcel to what we've talked about. One of my things, my outlet for my creativity and my voice is I want to help people relax. So it's a tough world out there and I think we're going to be fine, but we need all the help we can get. If you go to the website, I'll have all the links there. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I want to thank our guest, Minji Chang, for joining me on today's show. To learn more about Minji, please visit minjichang.com or her IG at Minjeezy. That's MINJEEZY. We also want to hear from you, our valued listeners. If you have suggestions for future guests or topics, feel free to reach out. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube for more inspiring conversations. Asian Pacific Voices Radio is produced by Asian Culture and Media Alliance, or ACMA, a nonprofit dedicated to empowering the Asian and Pacific Islander communities with a voice through media arts. If you'd like to learn more about ACMA or support our program, please visit our website at acmasocal.org. Once again, I'm Arnold Chun. Join us next week for another exciting and thought-provoking episode of Asian Pacific Voices Radio. Until then, take care, everyone.